also asked to join.
Oh, fantastic.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
Morning, everybody. Okay, all right, 32 participants. Okay, good morning. As Natasha mentioned, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolutely spectacular day in KZN. I hope the weather's good in the other regions also. If you could just take a moment just to go through what you see on the screen at the moment, which is just a couple of house rules. What we're going to do is just intro, and then you'll have an opportunity to put any questions that you may have after the presentation in the chat box. So with us this morning, we have Cleland Kruger, the Head of Learning and Development and Human Capital at Metropolitan. And she has some really beautiful insights to share with us with regard to digital transformation in the organization, lessons that we can take back with us for the do's and the don'ts. It's always great to hear tried and tested and what would work best for us. So welcome this morning, Cleland.
Good morning.
I'm handing the floor over to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really, really excited to hear what you have to share with us this morning.
Thank you. And yeah, good morning to everybody that has joined. I can tell you it's a beautiful day in Cape Town as well. So it almost seems to be this last little week of summer, and I have no doubt that winter is around the corner. And I'm sure one of these days we're going to be sitting with winter woolies and blankets over our laps as we work from home. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share today. And, you know, it's always difficult to be interactive on a webinar, but I really want to appeal to you to use your emojis, pop things in the chat. The chat isn't just reserved to a question, but if there's maybe something that resonates with you or sharing your experience, please absolutely feel that you are part of the learning experience today, that it's not just a case of just listening to me. So I'm just going to share my screen with everyone. And
there we go.
Yes, so super. So really just starting off, I want to say that I'm pretty sure that as I go through the presentation, a lot is going to resonate with a lot of you. I am absolutely sure that what we went through at Metropolitan was in no ways unique. I think pretty much people throughout the whole world went through a similar journey. But what I would like to share with you is, I think the speed at which we had to transition, and then a little model, which maybe is a model that can guide you in this or other projects. So I hope that that's a little take home for you, and something that makes it, you know, not just listening to my story, but actually being able to take nuggets out of it and go and apply those back in your workplace. So the quote on screen, I think really was something quite close to my heart. I started at Metropolitan about 4 years ago, and I remember joining with great enthusiasm, finding everything to be classroom based, and then promptly announcing to the business, oh, but we could do webinars and we could do virtual learning and e-learning. And I had all these ideas and things that I'd seen work really successful in other businesses. And I was promptly told, no, we are a face-to-face business. So our business touches the emerging markets, and the emerging market is really one where trust is built on having a financial advisor that you can see, people in the community, speaking to other people in the community. And it was felt that our learning should follow the same principle of how we do business should be how we do learning. So we never really got the opportunity, and I embraced the classroom learning, and that was pretty much our model. So what I really wanted to show you is the global trends and then the Metropolitan life trends before and after COVID. I'm sure many of you made the transition. So I think throughout the world, we were primarily classroom based training, with some people had elements of virtual training, some self-paced training, and then coaching and mentoring. And that shifted quite tremendously in COVID through to virtual training being the prime methodology. At Metropolitan, it was even more so than what the global research trends showed. So you'll see we had approximately 85% of our training was done classroom, face-to-face. About 10% was e-learning, and then we had a small element of coaching and mentoring. So we essentially changed 70% of our learning to virtual and increased or essentially doubled the e-learning from 10 to 20%. So it was quite a significant change for us, and literally swapping one thing for the next, and shutting down classroom training and moving 100% into virtual. So I wanted to chat a little bit around the journey and the model that I want to share. And I'm going to go through each step and share what some of the activities were as we went through the step. But this is my little model, is whenever you're confronted with any change, so it's not just a model that was applicable for this intervention, but any change, if you're moving into a new department, anything like that, it's a model that can be applied there. So it starts off in survival, and you pretty much need to put things in place just to keep your head above water, just to survive. From there, you would move into stability, and just kind of, you still just got your head above water, but things are a little bit stable. You don't feel as if you're necessarily drowning anymore. Then onto a stage of success, and ultimately into the stage of significance. And I think what the presentation today is going to show you very nicely is the different elements in these stages. They're not boxed. So you don't finish survival and then move into stability. They do flow from one to the other. But let me start off by showing you a little bit around the survival stage. So I want you just to take a second and cast yourself back a year from now. And if any of you are like me and avid Facebook users, I'm starting to see my memories of last year come up and things that we posted. And in a way, it's almost hard to take yourself back a year and think where we were and how far we have come in that year. But our reality was, we didn't know how to do things like Zoom. Nobody had spoken about Zoom. Nobody knew about MS Teams. All of those were fairly foreign concepts to most. And you might have found little pockets of people using those types of tools. But by and large, it wasn't really our comfort and our way of work. Likewise, working from home, there were some companies that had bravely transitioned into this sort of hybrid model of some days at work, some days in the office. But by and large, most South African companies were very much office-based organizations. So when on the 23rd of March, our president announced we were going into lockdown on the 26th, it was literally moving from night to day and totally moving into the unknown. So this was our reality, is 23rd of March, the president announced we were going into lockdown. We went into lockdown on the 26th of March. On the 1st of April, we had 200 new advisors that were joining our organization. And the business came to us and said, is there a way that you can train these people? And in retrospect, secretly, I'm sure the business was expecting me to go, don't be crazy. No, there's no ways we can do it. And I'm the kind of person that if somebody throws me a challenge, I'm like, well, I'll find a way to do it. So I said to the business, absolutely, we can do it. Leave it to us. And I remember in those 7 days, because it was essentially 7 days we had, was to convert this classroom learning into digital learning. I remember getting people on my team and saying to them, we've heard of Zoom, we've heard of Blue Jeans, we've heard of MS Teams, go and find out what should we use, what is best. We were literally at that stage that we didn't know. We also had the complication that we hadn't quite figured how we were going to get data to the learners. Our 200 new advisors obviously couldn't travel. We were in hard lockdown at that stage. So they couldn't get to an office. They couldn't access any of our branch facilities like Wi-Fi or anything like that. To compound matters, our new advisors are not given computers. So they only have a cell phone available to them. And we actually found, we didn't know it at the time, but not all advisors joined with a smartphone. So that was one of our lessons that we learned quickly. And we went back to human capital and said, a smartphone has to, from immediate effect, become a job requirement. But the survival mode, we pretty much put the learning together. We did it. We got data issued to these people by some miracle. It was very rudimentary. We used WhatsApp as little podcasts. So it was in no means sophisticated or anything that where we are now, we would go, oh, this is the standard. It was essentially a survival mechanism. Our facilitators were just amazing. They suddenly had to work from home. They were working on computers using Zoom and things like that they had never done before. We were explaining to the advisors how to load Zoom onto your cell phone. I mean, even things like that, you know, nowadays you'll find most people actually have Zoom loaded on their devices. Back then, that was all new. And we essentially kept our heads above water. We engaged with these 200 advisors. They were just so incredibly in awe that the business committed to their learning. I think at that stage, you can imagine you joining the company as lockdown has been announced. I think they weren't sure whether, you know, the company would honor their status as new employees, which we were very proud to say it's one of our principles. We absolutely would. And we ended up having a 98% pass rate on this training, which I think was pretty incredible. In the back of the scene, I kept hearing from the business around, this is great that learning is putting this temporary measure together because soon we'll go back to the way things were. And I don't know if you guys experience that a lot, but I mean, in all fairness, I don't think when we went into lockdown on the 26th of March, anybody thought that a year later we would still be in a lockdown. I mean, I think we were quite naive in terms of what this pandemic meant. And for a lot of people, they thought, oh, well, it's just these 3 weeks and then we'll go back to normal. And then the 3 weeks were extended and then so it became longer and longer. So I realized pretty quickly that I had people within the business that were in this mindset of going back to normal. And I was in this mindset of, oh, this is what I dreamt about and what I visualized 4 years ago when I joined Metropolitan. And I know the benefits of the virtual learning sort of methodology of training. So I was quite determined that we wouldn't lose what we had done, but we needed to retain this as a way that we operated in the business. So I very quickly started to partner with finance and started to talk to them about results that you would start seeing and cost saving that you would start seeing. So I started speaking a business language very quickly and very early on in this journey to start to get people to see this could actually be a long-term solution and not just a temporary measure. So we then started to transition into the stability phase. And we knew, okay, we had this bunch of the 200 people in April trained. We knew we had a new intake in May and it would continue every month. Bearing in mind, just as an aside, one of the main products that our business Metropolitan sells is funeral cover. So our business actually had quite a sought after products during the pandemic. So for us, continued recruitment of advisors became something important because our business was actually doing quite well and we had quite a lot of demand in terms of our products. So we then said, okay, well, we've sort of done this mom and pop shop WhatsApp learning with a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but let's get our facilitators trained up on Zoom. At that point, MS Teams didn't really have a lot of functionality that Zoom did. They didn't have breakout rooms. It wasn't as intuitive as Zoom. So we made the choice to go with Zoom. And as an aside, I just want to say that things move so quickly. Don't hold onto your decisions for too long, because although at that point we made a decision to go with Zoom, we are subsequently busy migrating over to MS Teams. So you need to be quite flexible with your technology choices as well. But yeah, so we upskilled people on Zoom. We did little tutorials for our employees, how to load Zoom onto your phone, how to actually work with Zoom. We started to add other skills into our curriculum and change the curriculum. So, obviously in the past, our focus, for example, on selling skills was a lot on face-to-face selling skills. We now started bringing digital skills more into the front. We started bringing in cold calling on telephone. So we adapted our curriculum as well. Also, quite importantly, is you can't take a 1 day's classroom training and make that a 1 day virtual training. So we had to look at how we actually train, and we came up with a beautiful blended rhythm where the facilitator would have the learners on Zoom for a period. We sent them learner packs. So they would then go and do some self-directed learning. We would break them into little WhatsApp groups where they would have discussions there. You'd come back onto Zoom. So we tried to keep it quite engaging and quite interesting with a little bit of a blend. And we basically found that our cost saving in terms of doing the learning this way was astronomical. So finance and the business, of course, loved that. And where we are if we had to take what we are currently doing and do that in a classroom, it would cost us 86% more than what we are currently doing. So I'll talk to you a little bit just now about how the curriculum has changed. But I mean, essentially, it financially is not even viable for us to ever go back to the classroom. So yeah, we had the saving, things were looking really well, things were going well. And this is where we started to say, right, it's time for us to actually move from the survival and stability into success. So there were a couple of things that we brought in the success phase. The one thing was the change to the curriculum. So a lot of the cost, when I talk about that 86% saving that we are essentially showing on what we're doing now, a lot of that cost essentially had no return on investment to learning. So it was around things like venue costs, catering costs, travel costs, etc. So, those are essentially things that I always say, putting you in a great venue and feeding you doesn't make you smarter. Whereas now we can actually take the learning budget and really put it into things that are going to make you smarter as an advisor. So one of the things that we recommended to the business was not to use them
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. It seems that we may have just lost Cleland for a second. I'm sure that she'll rejoin us in just a moment. Just a reminder to everybody, if you've got any questions or any comments that you want to share, please do so in the chat box. I don't think that it's a signal or a sound problem on your side. It seems that Cleland dropped off from her side. So we'll just give her a second to rejoin us, and then reshare her presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Perhaps I should go on to just what we wanted to chat about as well, just regarding some what's happening in the industry at the moment. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Natasha McAllister, and I'm Deputy Chair for the ASDSA and KZN. And just some updates in the skills development landscape. If you are part of our ASDSA WhatsApp group, and if you are a member, you get all this information firsthand. But just to let you know, there are some changes there are new BE rules around in the IT sector. So anyone that needs an ICASA license has to have 30% Black ownership and a level 4 triple BE. And if you don't comply, then it's a 5 million rand fine or a 10% or 10% of your annual turnover. So that's quite huge for organizations that need to be compliant and need ICASA licenses. Then just endless CETA problems. MerCETA at the moment is having an issue with uploading learners' registration, and everything needs to be done manually. So if you need learners to be uploaded, you do need to inform MerCETA so that they can, in writing, so that they have that and they can then upload it for you. WNRCETA have also got issues at the moment. Their system you still cannot load unfunded learners onto their system. So they need to upload that manually. WNRCETA at the moment have a DG grant funding window open, which closes on the 16th of April. Food Bev CETA also had a DG grant open, which is now closed. Oh, Cleland, hi, I see you back.
I am back. You know what? It's like Murphy's Law. My father is normally just so ridiculously stable. And of course, today of all days, it went on the loop. So I am back. So sorry about that.
No problem. You can share your screen again. I'll let you know.
Can I carry on? Super.
Please do.
Okay, so I'm just going to go back to where we were. Okay, are you seeing the screen again? Okay, my sincere apologies, but you know what, tech happens sometimes.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I was busy talking about the Advisor Academy and saying that initially we had a 5-day training course. And in those 5 days, the advisors were obviously given a couple of skills, and they learned one solution, which was our funeral product. And then they were basically released into the business, and part of their learning journey would be more solutions and more mandates as they grew as advisors. But you'd pretty much start off just with a funeral. So what we suggested to finance was to actually take the funds, invest it back into learning. So we increased the Advisor Academy threefold, from 5 days through to 15 days. We spent a lot more time on a proper induction, which the advisors were not really getting. We incorporated a lot more soft skills, as I mentioned, not just the face-to-face skills, but also a lot of telephonic skills, digital skills, etc. And we went from 1 product mandate through to 3 product mandates. So you now have an advisor that is a lot better trained. They've got more offerings in their basket. So when they meet with a client, you don't just have this one thing to sell a client, but now you've actually got a couple of options. And then another really big win there was previously what had happened was the advisors had to sell during their training in order to earn their salary at the end of the month. Now, you can imagine if I was an advisor, I'd be focused a lot more on my selling than on my learning, because that's going to be my bread and butter at the end of the month. And if I'm not selling, I'm not going to be earning for the month. And finance agreed that we would be able to pay these advisors a basic salary during their 15 days learning. So what we've done is we've attached components of the basic salary to learning. So you get a certain salary for passing each mandate and something for completing the course successfully. So you can well imagine we've got very, very engaged learners, because now the better I learn, the more I secure my bread and butter. So I think that was an incredible win for us. And then the other thing that we looked at during success, the success stage, was data allocations. So this kind of boggled my mind that it is such a complex thing to allocate data to an advisor on their cell phone. So we started off where we went with, you guys are probably familiar with the company Cellucity, who is a Vodacom partner. So sorry, I'm going to sort of give you like a little bit of a picture of this. It's probably going to sound like I'm a telecoms expert, but I think it gives one a nice idea. Cellucity is a Vodacom partner. There isn't a partner out there that can actually provide data for all the networks. So you've got to work with one of them. We would then have to get a list of all the telephone numbers of the new advisors. That list, and we need to know what network you are on. That list would need to go to Cellucity. They would then need to look at that, go and contract. So Vodacom, they could just issue. But then on MTN, Cell C, Telkom, etc., they would then need to go and contract with those providers, purchase data from them, come back to us, give us quotes on it. We then had to do a purchase order, send it back to them. Then they would allocate the data. Then it gets issued to the cell phone numbers. So you can imagine this process that I'm talking about was not quick and easy. The fastest we were able to do it was 7 days. And if something went wrong, it could take up to 15 days for us to issue data. And that was not an option for us at all. We also have a very quick and a very tight recruitment process. So we might be interviewing somebody on the 20th, 23rd of the month, make them the offer by the 25th, and they're starting on the 1st. So that didn't work for us. We then looked at another option where some of our regional managers have company credit cards, and we said to them, okay, you go to your local spa or whatever it is, and you purchase data, and let's see how that works. And that wasn't feasible because of the volumes. It was just too high for the credit card limits that was within the company policy. And this was one thing. I was like, there's got to be a better way. And I started to talk to people. And again, the power of the network, a friend of mine knew someone who knew someone. And what we have done is we've partnered with essentially a wholesaler of voice and data. So the people so if you, for example, own a spa or a CNA or a pet store or whatever, the way data is issued there at the till is through a third-party company that is essentially the vendor for all that data. And they put it through immediately on your system. I mean, I think it's quite a miracle. You go to the spa, you get a card, you punch it in, and that money that you spend gets allocated to your phone, and it's there instantly. What we've basically done is we've signed up for them as a vendor, so to say. And we are able to take that same list of cell phone numbers. We don't even need to know what network you're on. We take that CSV file, we put it into the system, and within 15 seconds, data now gets allocated to the advisor. And aside from this being such a great success for us, the company that we worked with said, oh my word, they'd never thought of this, and they'd never thought of this as a business problem and a potential solution. And they've now added it as a solution to their basket of goods. So I think that's quite a lovely success story. So the last stage in this model, we've been through survival, we've been through stability, through success, and we're now going into significance. And I want to show you a little bit of the return on investment in terms of significance. So as I mentioned earlier on, we partnered with finance very, very quickly. I knew that I wanted to own these wins in learning and development. And I didn't want anybody to think it was a fluke or a coincidence, or it was maybe because of them in another department. So it was pretty much what we predicted would happen. We started tracking with finance. So the first thing, as I mentioned, is we went from 1 product mandate through to 3 product mandates. But this is where the good stuff happens. Performance, we had a 20% increase in productivity in the advisors in the 0 to 6 month category. And then the really good stuff, retention has improved from 38% through to 60%. And these stats were at the beginning of the year, and we are seeing a continued upward trajectory of these stats. So I think it's pretty much around the significance is that we're seeing this upward trajectory. If you just think about, an advisor that suddenly they're onboarded properly, they are upskilled properly, they are paid for their learning, so they're not focusing on sort of a split focus. I need to sell, but I don't know the product yet. The engagement on virtual learning is done incredibly well by our facilitators. And we've essentially got to the stage that what the future looks like is no longer the way things were, but actually the retention of this digital learning and virtual training is going to be our new way of learning going forward for the business. So yeah, there's no model for this. Nobody's ever seen a pandemic. None of us have lived through a pandemic before, or anything even remotely like a pandemic. And I think it's difficult to go, oh, this is exactly what you need to do. But I think it's really the case to be curious, to be courageous, to experiment, to try things, to fail forward and fail fast. Be flexible and change things. So if something's working now and technology changes, be willing to change it as you go forward. And I think that's really what I would share as the key to success. So like I said, there's no going back to the past. For us, it's back to the future, and the future is more technology, enhanced virtual learning, taking things to an even greater level. I wanted to just share a little bit around what the future might look like, as best as what we can look into the crystal ball. But essentially, 89% of L&D professionals believe that online learning is the number one learning technology, and that it is definitely here to stay. 93% of organizations are using live online learning. The interesting thing is it can take up to 21 hours to develop 1 hour of interactive virtual learning. So there needs to be good partnering with business in terms of expectations. We get that all the time of, oh, you guys have done so many great videos. Can't you just quickly do a video on this for us? And it's not just a quickly do a video. It takes a bit of time to put something good together. In my next slide, I'll talk to you a little bit about dirty learning, which is quick and nasty ways of putting it together. 91% of learners say collaboration is key to learning success. And I think that's important, is to try and bring in an element of collaboration, an element of social learning. We've done that through creating WhatsApp groups where we actually get learners to speak to each other and not just rely on the facilitator. And it's quite amazing how those groups remain intact, and those learner relationships remain intact long after the classroom intervention has completed. In terms of numbers, this was the other thing that we were faced with the business, is it took a while for the business to understand that we couldn't put the same amount of learners that we would have in class into a virtual learning environment. So we would have between 20 and 30 learners normally in a classroom setup, and we put a cap on 12 learners in virtual learning because things take a lot longer. You've got technology issues like me earlier on that fell off and had to come back on. You don't have those types of complications in class. So your facilitator needs to be able to touch the individuals much more so than in a classroom. So we were quite steadfast in that. And the business has now seen the rationale for limiting the numbers. And then quite interesting, for most of you, your cameras are off. You are definitely looking at your cell phones. You've probably answered a WhatsApp or two, maybe even done an email in between while listening to the presentation. It's okay, 92% of you are doing that. But the engagement in virtual sessions is key. And that's something that we really work quite hard with our facilitators in terms of making sure that we keep that engagement alive. So I don't think that face-to-face training is going to disappear. There's definitely still a place for face-to-face training. I think we've very much experienced where the pendulum was on the one side and it's kind of swung all the way to the other side because of COVID and because of lockdown, that we didn't really have a choice to do things in different ways. But I think that face-to-face will definitely always have a place, but I think it'll no longer be the default. And I think what learning professionals and human capital professionals need to start thinking about is, when is face-to-face the appropriate intervention, as opposed to just automatically making things face-to-face. So I think being a little bit more intentional around when do we bring that in, or how do we bring in a blend where you have face-to-face for certain aspects, but maybe you have pre-learning done virtually or post-learning done virtually. I said I would speak a little bit about dirty learning. So it's a term that we love to use. And dirty learning is essentially learning that is developed quick and fast. It's not perfect, but it is good enough. So I always use the example and I say, if you want to know how to make a lasagna and you go onto YouTube and you've got somebody in their kitchen and they're showing you and they go, oh, add a pinch of salt, and then they go, oh, actually, no, sorry, it should be 2 pinches of salt. You don't go, oh, this person doesn't know what they're doing. They don't know how to cook. I'm going to find somebody else's lasagna to follow. You kind of go with the flow and you go, oh, okay, no, it wasn't 1 pinch, it was 2 pinches of salt. Or, you kind of, it's become almost acceptable for there to be a little bit more casual learning. So a lot of the learning that we put out quite quickly to get it digitally was dirty learning. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. What we've now started in our significant journey is to go back to a lot of that content and go, okay, we now need to upgrade, we now need to refine, we now need to bring things up to a different level. And I think upskilling your L&D teams is crucial in terms of these new skills. Most of your L&D professionals would have been sort of learned in instructional design techniques and not necessarily how this new world is operating. So you almost need to backfill. The first quote said we've been propelled probably 5 years ahead of where we were, and you've almost got to backfill those 5 years worth of skills in your L&D team to get them up to speed so that they can design, build, and facilitate in terms of this new way of learning. And then we spoke just now about collaboration and engagement being so important for virtual learning, because we know 92% of people are not entirely focused. So making your learning better is definitely through more learner engagement, more social interaction, more learning touch points. And those, I really believe, are the types of things to bring into your virtual learning. So we do a lot of polls during Zoom, Mentimeters, maybe a quick Q&A during WhatsApp. We ask for learners' opinions. They sometimes have to go and practice a role play and then record something on WhatsApp and share it with the group. So we have a lot of engagement so that it doesn't just feel like a one-way, just sort of somebody just droning on and on in your ear. So all in all, and to conclude, I think it's definitely one of the most exciting areas in the business that we can be in right now. We're in a phase of tremendous change. The whole world is really looking at how things were done, how things are doing now. What does the future look like? How should things happen into the future? And you in learning and development and human capital can really be an architect to create this new world. And be, you always say it's an opportunity to essentially leave a legacy. I really believe at Metropolitan for years, people will talk about the war story of, do you remember in 2020 when suddenly the world had this COVID pandemic and this is what we did? Can you believe that we never used to train like this before that? And I really think it'll start to become success stories and war stories. And for you to actually be able to attach your name to that and go, yeah, I was part of that. It's such an exciting prospect for people in L&D. It is scary because yes, we are doing things that we don't know. We don't know if they're going to be a success. No one's seen the movie before, but it's also so exciting. And if you are brave enough and courageous enough to step in there, I really appeal to you, grab the opportunity with both hands and be that pioneer.
Helen, thank you so much. That was extremely insightful and so many little treasures that I could take away and apply not only in my business, but things that I can share with my clients, and just so that they know they're not alone. That
Yes.
there are other organizations who have had to navigate their way through this transition. So
absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, with your, I know that you're conscious of how many individuals you have in a virtual training session, for example. Have you reduced the classroom time? So where there would normally be a 6 to 8 hour classroom time, is it still that?
No, we've definitely looked at how we blend things and do things a bit differently. So, it's six hours in the classroom cannot become 6 hours on Zoom. So we've definitely looked at how we do things a little bit differently. We Zoom for a period, then we actually break. We let learners work together or work individually through learning material. We might give them something to read or something small to work on. We use the WhatsApp groups quite a lot. We actually partner advisors together. So, they can even do a little WhatsApp call outside of the group, practice a role play. We also use, the functionalities like breakout rooms, etc. So, that people actually get the opportunity for their voice to be heard as well. But I think it's really important that you can't, your training can very easily become a webinar. If it's just you as a facilitator facilitating all the time. And I think it's really important to be quite deliberate and intentional around that engagement with your learners. And our facilitators are just amazing. I mean, every day I get copies of WhatsApps and emails of how the facilitators actually were able to engage the learners so much. And very often the comments are that learners thought it was going to be really boring being virtual, and the comment is often how amazed they were in terms of how engaging and how interactive the learning was presented to them.
Wow. Okay. No, that's incredible. I do have another question for you. Did you find that the transition for the younger generation was easier than it was for the older generation?
Yes. So I must say, fortunately, Metropolitan has been on a journey prior to COVID around digitizing the organization. And it's quite interesting that there was, like with any change curve, you get your early adopters, and then you get your majority, and then you get your laggards. And I think we were kind of like in the majority sort of phase of that bell curve. And this really got people, it pushed them. So even your laggards sort of realized, well, you know what, if I'm going to learn, if I'm going to produce business, if I'm going to sell to someone, if I'm going to need to put that contract through on the system, I'm going to have to embrace technology. Absolutely. It definitely, I think, is younger for the easier for the younger generation who are familiar. It's more natural for them to work on an app or figure something out, whereas for the older generation, you almost need somebody to tell you how to do things. But we did a lot of tutorials to help people navigate this new digital world, and we also found people were really supportive of one another. So if one employee got stuck, another employee would very, very quickly help them. But yes, you definitely do see that the younger generation adapt to this a lot quicker.
Oh wow! Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to go to the chat box and just have a look at some of the questions that we may have. Lots of good mornings. So glad everybody could join us. Okay. All right. From Tia Kruger. Hi, Cleland. Which apps or software did you use when making or creating visually stimulating e-learning content?
Yeah, so that's quite an interesting question, because it's almost overwhelming how many things are available and how many things are out there. And you can almost get sort of caught up in this exploring technology and never really moving forward from it. So we got people in the team to explore different technologies. We looked very quickly at which ones work for us, which ones don't. I mean, I'll mention a couple, but there are so many more, and there might even be things that are better than what I'm mentioning. The first thing I want to say is, don't be scared of the absolute basics. So we did some of the podcasts on WhatsApp, literally with the person pressing record and talking. And we did some videos literally with the person holding the phone and doing the video like that. So don't necessarily think that there must be a technology. You can use some of your basics, but we do quite a lot of our presentations or video content. We use an app called Screencast-O-Matic, where you can actually record your screen, you can do voiceovers, you can put it to music, you can add images in it, and it's very, very easy to use and inexpensive. Our designers have found a wonderful tool called ThingLink. So THING, ThingLink. And they use that technology, and they're much more clever than I am on this. I can't tell you more than what I'm going to tell you now, but they basically use ThingLink along with Storyline Articulate, and they kind of build things together. So yeah, I mean, that's just an example of some of the apps that we've used, and we continue exploring apps. One that we're exploring at the moment is an app called Synth, SYNTH. We haven't started using it yet, but this is one where it's a way to do podcasts, and people can also do a voice recording in response to your podcast. You can have a channel that gets published. So yeah, my recommendation to you is put a little bit of time aside in your diary. I try and do about 2 or 3 hours a month, where all I do is I just go and explore new tech and what else is out there. And like I said, sometimes we play around with things, and at the end we go, nah, it doesn't really work for us. And sometimes we play around with things and we go, oh my gosh, this is awesome. We're making it one of our new, it's something new in our toolkits.
Super. So be curious, like you said.
Yes.
Okay, I'm having a look at some of the other questions here. Okay, so Mariki asked, could you explain a bit more regarding the data purchasing by learners as vendors? I don't think that the learners purchased it. I think that you purchased it and allocated to their phones. Is that
correct?
Right? So the learners didn't.
Yeah. So. Okay. So we basically have an account with this distributor, and we draw down from the account. So we have X amount of money in the account, and basically what happens is they provide data for all the different networks. So all we have to do is provide the cell phone number on their system. And when we've got the cell phone numbers, we then say, okay, we want 1 gig or 10 gigs or 50 gigs or 100 minutes of airtime or whatever it might be. And the system basically automates that whole process. It's very nice because it gives you the option, you can put a little message on it. So when the learner gets that data to their phone, it actually goes, hi, learner, you've been allocated 20 gigs of data from Metropolitan to use for your trainee advisor program. So there's also some context as to what this data is for that arrives on their phone. But I think the great thing is really that it happens now literally by the click of a button, and isn't this long-winded process that we started off with. So I think that's kind of how, we tried one option, we failed forward fast. We tried another option, we failed forward fast. We found this option, and it's one that we're definitely sitting with.
Fantastic, thank you. Annalisa said, Cleland, you are such a great visionary and strategist. I'm humbled to know you. And then she signed off. And a question from Moses, where or how to get specific tutorials to use various technologies for teaching and learning? So I think you mentioned the tutorials. Were those tutorials that you created?
Yes.
Okay.
So look, I think also maybe Moses, I'm not sure if this is maybe your question, but around start to make some choices around who it is that you follow, that you subscribe to. So there's amazing channels out there, and again, there is just so much on Google, and you'll start to find the ones that work for you and the ones that lack. I've sort of started following a whole lot of people, then a couple I've unsubscribed to because I found it doesn't really add the value that I'm looking for, or it doesn't have what I'm looking for at that stage. And there's a couple that I really like, and I've kind of gotten into following them and subscribing them. But I mean, I'd really say just go out there, Google, subscribe to networks. Remember, if you subscribe to something and you find they're spamming you, you just unsubscribe. You've lost nothing by trying it. LinkedIn is also really great. I mean, there's a lot of professionals that you can follow that also can give great advice and great insight. So I really think staying abreast of trends is critical right now. Things are moving at an incredibly fast pace in terms of how the world is changing and what the future of learning and development and human capital is going to be looking like. And you cannot for one day rest on your laurels. You've literally every day got to try and stay abreast of what is happening out in other companies and from a tech perspective.
Okay, super, thank you. Natasha has asked, how do you monitor the learners are using the data for training and not for personal use? I'm sure that would have come up somewhere along the line.
Yeah, so Natasha, great question, and it was something that we were concerned about. So we basically put a contract together with learners. We cannot monitor what they use the data for, but we put a contract together to say you're going to need X amount of data to complete this learning program. Here is your data. Should you use it for your own purposes or run out, you will be responsible for purchasing data to complete the program. So the learners learn very quickly that if I'm going to spend the whole weekend YouTubing or streaming something and I use up my data and I can't complete the learning, you're not going to get paid if you're not completing your learning. And to complete your learning, you've got to be online, and then you're going to have to take it out of pocket. And we're quite generous with the data. We give you enough for your learning and a little bit more. So I must say, up until now, we've had very, very seldom have we had somebody that has run out of their data. I mean, I can literally count it on one hand, and we are training 180 to 200 new advisors per month. So I think so long as you just have your expectations set out very clearly up front, you should be okay.
Right, okay, fantastic. Joe said, great presentation. I'm particularly interested in the data rollout. How many gigabytes did you find that Zoom is taking per hour per person? And did you investigate other virtual platforms to compare? I think you've answered that. I think he's asking just for a little bit more detail.
Yes.
So do you have a breakdown of a hour?
It's not as easy to answer as X amount of gigs, and that's why I say we've kind of worked out, and in the beginning we monitored it. We had facilitators that every day they had to tell us how much data did you use. We got some learners that we said to them, oh, please would you help us with this? So we actually tested it to see how much data you would use. But there are things that do make a difference. I believe that MS Teams uses more data than Zoom. You also have issues where if your connectivity is not as strong, you actually pull more data for the connectivity. So there's a lot of variables that impact. But what we've pretty much managed to do is we've managed to go, okay, for this training course, you will probably use approximately 17 gigs of data, so we'll give you 20 gigs of data. So we kind of work in that, and we've now through this year we've sort of got a little recipe in terms of how much data a different course basically consumes. So that would be my recommendation, is to actually literally go and test it and set your data usage and see how much you use for your particular, it depends on how many people are on the Zoom. Are cameras on? Are cameras off? So even the behavior of other people impacts your data consumption. So it is a little bit complicated.
Okay, all right, yeah. Like you said before, it's not a one shoe fits all sort of a model. Joe also asked, did you have a system for addressing connectivity issues that different participants have, signal problems, finding alternate locations for them, or would you say that was the learner's responsibility?
Yeah, it's tricky. We kind of had everything running like a well-oiled machine, and then last year, Eskom promptly started load shedding, and we kind of like almost felt as if we were like going back into that survival mode again. And I think that's an interesting thing about that model, is that you can take a step forward and take a step back. So yeah, when load shedding came, that became tricky because it impacted data, it impacted our ability to train on Zoom. I mean, for example, in Gauteng, they would sometimes load shed for up to 4 hours. Your computer battery or your cell phone battery can't last that long. So yeah, there are a lot of those types of things coming up. It was harder for us when we were in the harder lockdowns because there were not alternatives. But what our alternative now is to learners is that if you, for example, are experiencing load shedding or you're experiencing connectivity problems, because we are on a level 1, we then say it's your responsibility to go into the office where we've got more stable connection. So we have kind of passed that responsibility onto the learners. But yeah, unfortunately, sometimes signal is an issue. We have a lot of branches in rural areas where it absolutely is a difficult it is a difficult thing to deal with. And what we sometimes do is we then just revert to a less data intensive technology. So we might just go onto WhatsApp instead of staying on Zoom. So again, the flexibility of your facilitators to actually help the advisors with their learning, I think, is quite important.
Yeah, they need to be adaptable. I agree. Okay. Blended learning. Okay, Des asked, do you use blended learning in your offering with synchronous and asynchronous sessions?
So we basically do most of our training live. We have some pre-recorded assets that we will sometimes use, but essentially our blended learning solution is more of a live solution. So we don't really have pre-recorded things that we send out. It possibly is something for us to look at into the future, but yeah, basically that is the way that we facilitate. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think there may be a component of blended, but it's more or less been phased out. I mean, you completely stop the face-to-face learning. Lots of thank yous. Another great tool for virtual facilitation is Adobe Connect, which we've used alongside MS Teams. Thanks for the insights and innovative approach. So lots of thanks from all of our everybody in our audience. Greatly appreciated. There aren't any more questions, but if there are any questions that are posed or shared with us, then we will be more than happy to share them with you, and you can gladly connect.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Cleland. I wish you continued success in your journey. And maybe this is something that we can revisit again in 6 months' time and have a look at, the impact of significance. Because I think for an L&D professional, success is not just enough. It has to be significant for the business, significant for the learner. Because that ultimately is where an L&D professional's reward lies. So thank you. I'm going to hand back over to Natasha, who's going to fill us in on the remainder of the landscape, skills development landscape updates. Again, Cleland, thank you so much. And Natasha, share with us.
Thank you, Cleland. That was really an amazing presentation, and I certainly have a lot of homework to do for myself, to do some investigating and exploring. So just going back to some of the changes and things that are happening in the skills development landscape, we have Services SETA, as I said, has one more virtual workplace skills plan annual training report seminar that's going to be on the 19th of April. So you need to register for that. Also, don't forget, anyone that is registered with the Department of Higher Education and Training does need to submit also an annual training report to the Department of Higher Education by the end of April, and that is for the purpose of monitoring compliance. So anyone that is registered with the Department of Higher Education has to submit an annual report. And then, yeah, I'm sure everyone is submitting their workplace skills plans and annual training reports. If there are anyone that are having issues with any SETA, please do let us know. And then if anyone would like to share anything in the skills development landscape with others, you are welcome to do that. If anyone would like to raise their hand and just chat, if there's anything that you feel needs to be shared with anyone. No hands. And just remember, if you are a member of the ASDSA, you do get first-hand information. We put you on our WhatsApp group, and that is a national WhatsApp group. So it's all the members nationally, and it really is a great platform for sharing information, and you get first-hand information about anything that is happening in the skill development landscape. Yes, Sharon. Morning, Sharon.
I think you're on mute, Sharon. Sharon van den Heever is our national chairperson, and I think she wants to share something. Sharon, you're still on mute.
Sharon, you'll be able to unmute yourself.
Hi guys, how are you?
Great, thank you. Great to have you join us. Thank you so much.
No problem. I just wanted to share a little bit of information with everybody, just so that everybody is aware that we have now got signed MOUs with SABPP, and we have signed MOUs with APED as well. So any of the members will enjoy information sharing across those two platforms. We've also in principle agreed with the SABPP that any CPD points that are given by ASDSA can be used for SABPP and vice versa. We're still working out the dynamics of those, but we are in aggressive talks with SABPP from that perspective on CPD. So I just wanted to update all of our members that there is very aggressive work happening in the background with regards to our MOUs with APED and SABPP.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sharon. And then if you have a look at what is on the screen, also this will be applicable, and then also translate into what Sharon said for SABPP.
Yeah, we're going to be doing coming up in the months to come. We're going to wait for workplace skills plans to complete, and then we're going to be doing a workshop on CPD points, on continued professional development, and just how simple it is to do your CPD points and submit them to your professional bodies, because I think it's very important to have a professional designation. A professional designation underpins your experience in the industry and underpins the qualifications that you have. So we're going to be running some workshops in May that will underpin how easy it is to actually complete that CPD record card and submit it back to your professional body. And we're going to be talking to our MOU organizations to ensure that we collaborate with them on those. So, watch this space. We're working furiously towards those deadlines for May.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sharon. Moses did say that the gist of what you were sharing with us with regard to APET and SABPP with regard to the CPD points, if you could just very briefly put that into the chat box so that they have access to that. And then Andy would like to share something with us. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, everyone. To let you know that we've been working on streamlining and simplifying our evaluation process to get a designation. We've completed a pilot group, and you've seen some of the results coming forth on our various social media. We plan to launch this during the course of next month to all members who are keen to get a designation. And I'm going to encourage you now, please, to look out for it. I think you'll find that for most of you, getting a designation is quite within your grasp. So please consider it seriously and get yourself a designation.
Yes, absolutely. Natasha recently was awarded her skills development master designation. So again, congratulations. That's really exciting. And then I see that there are a few people who are sharing information with regard to Bongakosi shared bank CETA and Cheetah DG windows are also now open. So if you could, everybody could please just keep an eye on the chat box and enjoy the information that's being shared there. But ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your patience. We are 8 minutes over close of session. Thank you again for joining us. Cleland, again, thank you so much for your time and your insights and your experience and expertise. I'd like to wish everybody a fantastic week going forward. Thank you, Natasha, for sharing the information, and Angelique for engineering in the background, and wishing you all a wonderful day further. Thank you.